Hi, welcome. I'm Herb Pierce. I want to have a good time tonight with you introducing the 9 personality types of the Enneagram. This is a system that I've been teaching for over 18 years, and it's been extremely valuable for people that I've worked with. I'm a therapist, psychotherapist. I also do team trainings and organizations. I teach lots of public workshops using this system. It's a system of 9 types. The Enneagram means 9 types in Greek, and it has a history of over 2,500 years. The Enneagram symbol has been around that long. It's actually been used mostly since the 1970s. The modern Enneagram has been psychologically investigated and researched since that time. So what I want to do tonight is have a good time describing the 9 types. I'm going to use some props on the table here. And we'll see, as you're listening, you can discover what your core type might be. First, let me say, all 9 of these are your personality styles. We have bits of all of them. And at various points in our lives, we use all 9 of these perspectives. So your core Enneagram type is really the one that you think about the most, the one that you automatically focus on and use. And people that know you well most likely can type you probably even better than yourself. So wait till you hear all 9 types. And then after I describe the types, I'm going to talk about some of the subtleties and relationship dynamics and ways to grow and develop. So let me just start with type 1. I'm going to go through type 1 through 9. Type 1 is the perfectionist. This is the type that's always looking to do things right. Matter of fact, if you live in New England, you probably have a bit of this, even if you're not a 1. The perfectionist is trying to correct things, so they always have their latest correction tape, whatever that is, so they're always fixing things. They're the folks that are straightening the pictures and pulling the dead leaves off your plants and wanting to get things the way they should be. So there's a lot of shoulds with this type. This type likes to do things perfectly, so when they measure something or build something, they want to do it just right. They have a hard time being flexible and allowing things to be what they are. There's always this inner critic that's always yapping at them about how they should do this and should do that. And of course, if you're focusing on what you should do, not only will you be critical of yourself, you'll also be critical of other people. So when ones are being critical of you, just think about how tough they are on themselves. They're really trying to improve you. That's really what they're trying to do. Everything is measured out in the 1. You know, I was talking to a 1 recently at a workshop, and he was saying around the holiday time he made 3 batches of eggnog, and each one of them were exactly the same, as if there was pride about doing things perfectly. And you know, on my end, it didn't matter. It wouldn't matter either way. I like things kind of a little different. So what 1s need to do is learn to grow and develop in a way that they are more accepting of the way things are rather than how they should be. The positive qualities are, this is a person generally who has a lot of integrity. They do a very thorough job. They're self-motivated to do things right. You can count on them. They're honest. Generally, they're on time. They like to have life just, set in a certain kind of way. So if you know a person like this, most likely they're a type 1. Let's go to type 2. Type 2 is I call it a heart type. This is called the helper or the over-helper. This is someone who's always trying to please you, make you feel special, make you feel great. And they're tuned into you. They're not focused so much on their own needs. They're focused on your needs. They actually like you to be needy, but the last thing they want to do is focus on their own needs. So their identity is very much, I'm going to please you, but I want to be valued and loved and respected and appreciated for how I give to you and attend to you, etc. This is a very personal type, meaning they like to personally engage. They don't necessarily have to do things right like the 1, but they're positive, upbeat. This is called also the cheerleader. This is someone who's always cheering you up and rah, rah, rah. But again, if you don't appreciate them or attend to them to some degree, they can be upset with you. So they can be very generous, but they're, to a large degree, they also want to kind of give love to get love back, okay? They need to focus more on attending to their own needs and telling you more directly what they need. So every type, by the way, every type is doing something that is natural and normal. It's just the type does it way overboard. That's all it is. Because again, we're all 9 types. And so like when you're discovering what your core type might be, it's important to get that you do this all the time, or it's actually more about motivation and what you pay attention to. So the 2 is always kind of thinking about it. Each type thinks about its type a lot. So that your thinking process really determines your type. By the way, your type is a basic mindset that tends to stay throughout your life, but the whole idea, and I'm going to focus on this later, is how do you correct some of that? How do you balance that out so you're not so strongly focused on the type? So, and 2s always have their paraphernalia ready. You know, they have their, if you're crying, they have their Kleenex ready to wipe your tears. They'll have their cards, or many 2s will have special gifts that they can give you quickly if they like you. Many 2s will actually have drawers of gifts that they just happen to have on hand. Whenever you need something, they're there to please you and give to you. I'm sure you've met folks like this. At the same time, you can feel very beholden to a 2, so you need to be careful to either appreciate the 2, but if you appreciate them too much, they actually might be giving you more than you want. So it's important to set limits with 2s. Let's go to type 3. So type 3 is the achiever. This is a type that, if you had to pick a type that the United States was, I would say this would be type 3. This is a type that overachieves. You could call this type the overachiever. This is someone who is focused on goals, direction. They want to get stuff done. Their identity is focused on what they get done, accomplishing things. So each type, in a sense, is an ego type, or what each type identifies with strongly. So the 3 says, unless I accomplish things, then I'm not worthwhile. So each type is trying to get their esteem through their idea of what they think they have to do to be valued by other people, or themselves too. So I was talking to a 3 today, and I knew she was a 3 right away because she instantly talked about bottom lines, goals, how we could, when I would present an idea, she would instantly think about how can we make this idea happen, etc. So this is a type that, they always have their monthly planner. Matter of fact, real 3s have all the latest electronic equipment, Blackberries, anything that's going to speed up their process. They generally know the internet well, and they have their blog. A friend of mine is a 3, and actually 2 friends of mine are 3, and they both have their blogs that they are into. They generally dress well, and they want to look sharp and efficient. So speed and efficiency is the main thing for 3s. They're competitive. If I'm pretending I'm a 3, I want to get things done as fast. I want to be the top person. I love competition. I generally like the free enterprise system because I want to be the winner. May the person who produces the most get the most points and the most money. So, for instance, in this culture, a 3 might focus on money, and say if you're in Thailand, the type 3 might focus on being the head monk. So it depends on the culture you're in. If in this culture, a 3 might decide to be a doctor or lawyer, and it might not necessarily be the best fit for them, but because it's valued, 3s will go for what's valued. And they want to look good. So a 3 is going to wear whatever they think is going to make them look good. So they'll dress in whatever way they think is, is going to be valuable for the culture they're in. So they'll wear this kind of hat for one political party and another hat for another one. So glitz and glitter, once a 3 told me, what I sell is more the sizzle rather than the steak. So advertising, marketing, sales, etc. Entrepreneurship, often is a very 3 kind of thing. By the way, I forgot to put on the 2 hat. Let me just put this on. I'll backtrack just for a second. The 2, the helper, pleaser, they'll wear anything to please, to be seductive. Not that they're always seductive, but they want to do whatever it is that's going to please. So if they're interested in you, they're going to wear and whatever is going to produce the result. Let's go to type 4. 4 is the romantic. Okay, so this is a type that is going to have their beret on, and 4s love depth and intensity. They're looking for something that's special and unique. They hate humdrum life. They hate just focusing on everyday life. They're looking for something deep and intense. I met a 4 once, and the first thing out of his mouth was, "Tell me something deep and intense about you that makes you different." It was a workshop, and that's, would be a classic kind of 4 thing. So many 4s are artists, and this is one of the names for the 4 is the artist. And this is a person that's often in music, poetry, drama, dance, theater. They want to create and be someone special. Often underneath the surface, they don't feel special, and they feel like they have to do something kind of new and different to be special. This is someone who's always searching deeply for meaning in something that's outstanding. So they're focusing a lot on birth and death and transition and change and something that's challenging. 4s do not mind going as deeply as they can. So suffering, pain, loss, despair, that's all part of the dance too, nostalgia. There's this constant search for what's missing. But 4s can equally be positive, joyful, upbeat, and they can go up and down the ladder or the elevator of emotion. So this is a person who's typically very emotional, but often subtle. They're not wanting to miss out on special, unique moments. They're very concerned about things being boring, so there's this totally an anti-boredom type. And some props, I think of the unicorn is a 4 symbol. 4s are often into mythical kinds of things, and so, and particularly 4s, the unicorn, were they real, were they not real? 4s like to look at something that's kind of new and different. This is a special object that was made from the ash of Mount St. Helens, the explosion in 1980. So 4s will often create beauty from something that's painful. They're into transformation. And I have a lot of 4 props. It's one of my favorite types. They like mystery. Okay, they don't like things. They don't like things just flat out direct. They like things that have a little kind of mysterious edge. The movie Titanic is certainly would be one of the movies that represents both the characters in the movie. I think are 4s. And as I mentioned, they typically are very artistic. So anyway, so I think you get a sense of 4. Let's go to 5. Again, we have all parts of these, so don't see that you're just only one type. It's just that we all meet people that probably fit these more than others. By the way, former relationships that you've been in, it's really helpful. I have found it so extremely helpful to understand relationships I've been in. By the way, I'm a psychotherapist, I'd mentioned that, and I work a lot with couples and families, and I use this system fairly exclusively. Most people see me because I work with the Enneagram, and it really helps in terms of relationship dynamics, which I'll focus on later, and it also helps understand past relationships you've been in, what happened that might have been difficult or wonderful. So let's go to type 5, whereas 4s typically, the romantic is very emotional. They like to go deep with things. And 4s are focused on their inner emotional life. 5s are focused more on objectivity, learning, thinking. This is an intellectual type. This is the brain, okay? This is a type that wants to learn and understand things constantly. So the passion of the type, and each type has a passion, is knowledge, learning, going to courses, reading, being on the internet. This is a type that likes to have conversations if they go to a party about some subject that they're thinking about or studying. They like to learn new things, new and different things. You'll see them often in things like an astronomy club meeting, or a political discussion group, or a Mensa group, or a chess club, or classical music. This is a type that really doesn't like small talk. If I'm a 5, the last thing that I really want is small talk. I want something substantial. I'd rather have a conversation with one person or just be alone reading so that I'm feeding my mind. So this is really the type. Generally speaking, as a 5, I'm quiet unless I'm learning something. So if people are talking and I don't have anything to add, why should I talk? I can be very social, but if so, and many 5s are not so social, I'll talk about that later around subtypes, I'm social mostly to learn. So I might go to various groups to learn knowledge. And 5s have great ideas. Many inventors, Albert Einstein, a lot of scientists, computer folks, they have great ideas. So often you have very, very stimulating conversations with type 5s. So you could basically summarize this type as intellectual, but you'll find like professors could be 5s. Again, you'll have all 9 types that can be in any profession, but some of the ones that you might see, certainly the computer programmers or computer engineers, many 5s are in that field. So let's go to type 6, the questioner. Now 5s question things too, but 6s I call either the questioner or the detective. This is a type that really likes to explore things and examine things. So they're always looking for cues. They might, check out the dust mites in the carpet or be concerned about that, or the radon gas in the basement. So they're always examining things, asking questions. If someone asks lots of questions more than you typically might answer, they could be a 6. 6s are looking for security and safety through wanting to understand as much as possible. So if there's a meeting coming up, they might want to know what the agenda is beforehand so they can research that. The motto, be prepared, is very much a 6 process. The whole Scout thing is very much about knowledge and learning, but it's also very much about survival. So this is a type that always is concerned about safety and danger, as I mentioned, so they'll have all their flashlights ready for any emergency. Typically a 6 will have a flashlight in every room. Matter of fact, I taught a workshop recently and a 6 said that they had 100 flashlights. I said, what do you do with them all? Well, I have one in every room and I just happen to collect flashlights. So this is a type 2 that likes to go below the surface. And many times psychologically, you'll see a lot of psychologists that are 6s. So they'll have, if they're swimming, they would rather be able to see what's under the water, because what's down there? There's snapping turtles, and I just want to know what's going on. And they're ready for their weather report and being ready for any possible storm. So they always have their umbrella up and ready to use. As a 6, people I care about that I want to protect. This is a type that's very protective of others. I want to make sure I tell them when the next storm is going to be, etc. Many sixes literally will watch the Weather Channel a lot, particularly in the winter. I usually have my emergency repair equipment in the car or at home, etc. And it's not unusual for me to take first aid or CPR. I want to be ready. Okay, so let's talk about 7. Oh, sometimes here we are. We're at 7 now with the hats. Yeah. Oh, I know what it was. Type 6. I have a lot of problems for 6. They're the ones that do the safety equipment such. So they have their hard hats on. So like OSHA and all the protective legislation around safety in organizations, we really owe that to 6s. And they're often in police, military, FBI, CIA. They're ready to protect us. So, thank God for 6s. All these types, if any type were missing, we'd be in a mess. So type 7, whereas 6s are about safety and security, the 7 says, no. Let's just have a good time. Let's tell jokes. Let's party. Let's put on your jester hat. Let's tell stories. Let's have a great time and smile and have fun, eat, drink, and be merry. As a 7, the optimist, I like to do new and different things. I like to be positive, upbeat, smiling. This is the only type that doesn't have to do affirmations. The mind is a constant affirmation in the type 7. This is probably the most envied type in the Enneagram. Many people would like to have this perspective. So the positive side is that, just typically positive. The downside, though, can be that this type has a tendency to avoid anything that's too negative, to avoid problems. Like as a 7, I might want to solve problems quickly, but I don't necessarily want to talk about problems too much. I love to brainstorm. I can act, I can get things done for sure, but sometimes I might put things off that are difficult or boring. Like the 4, I'm particularly concerned about being bored. I don't want to be bored. I want to have a great time all the time. So, and not only do I celebrate my birthday, I celebrate my birthday every day. So, to me, every day is a day to celebrate. And I like to be upbeat. If I'm around people that are too negative, it's hard for me. I want to change the subject or I want to move away. So if I'm working with someone who's not too 7-ish, it can be a challenge for me. At the same time, I'm going to try to cheer them up, make them feel positive, kind of coach them on how to be my type. Now, one of the things, each type has a tendency to relate to other people as if they're the same type. That's one of the difficulties about relationship dynamics, because we tend to think that other people are kind of like us. Truthfully, people are really different. Each of the 9 types are like 9 planets, and you can tell this by the kinds of issues and conflicts and confusions we get in with people, like, why are you being that way? Well, for the person, it's just being normal. That way, if they're with a bunch of people of the same type, they're going to be pretty much similar. Now, the descriptions I'm giving you are fairly much the average person. If a person matures way beyond the type, like a 7 can be very serious and deal with problems and difficulties, etc. And it can be more like the 4. So when I'm working with a 7, for instance, I might coach them to how to be more like a 4, to balance. So, so I think that's the prop. Oh, here's another prop. Yeah, this is the type. They go to Mardi Gras. They're in Rio for the holidays, or go to New Orleans. So they want to celebrate. Life is a constant celebration. So let's do type 8 is called a director. This is a type that, or boss, or challenger. This is a type that's very strong-willed. They're similar to the 7 in that they like to kind of enjoy life, but this type likes to do what they want. Eight's, type 8, the boss or the director, doesn't mind a little conflict. You know, they're in charge. They're the king or the queen. And they'd rather just say what they're thinking. This is the type that has a really hard time holding back. So if I'm an 8, I just want to tell you what I think and get it off my chest. And I'm not always totally concerned about being sensitive to everyone. I'm not trying to push people away. I'm not trying to hurt anyone. Matter of fact, I often am very sensitive underneath, but I like to lead things and be strong and powerful, and I like to empower other people. So whatever type, for each type, that person of that type is great at supporting other people around the qualities of the type. So the qualities of this type is empowerment, strength, action, making things happen, expressing things strongly. Conflict, I don't particularly like conflict, but I don't mind it. I'd rather have conflict and have things be strong and direct rather than avoid conflict. My relationship to anger, it's not that I'm angry necessarily a lot, but if I do feel anger, it just feels like, that's okay. I'm pretty okay with my basic instincts. I'm not a big image person, though, you know, obviously image is important to me, but it's not as important as some of the other types, which I'll go into in a little while. So this type will say exactly what they're thinking, so there's a major advantage in that because you kind of know where you stand. And they're a lot of fun to be with. And they're very strong. They have a really strong energy. It can be fast at times. So this is the force. And so this is a type that sometimes it can be, whoa, okay, I get it, okay? So that's type 8. And if you haven't figured out your type by now, most likely you're the next type. Type 9 is the peacemaker. This is, I call the 9 the typeless type. This is a type that's always into peace and harmony, avoiding conflict, getting along, not making waves. Typically as a 9, 9s go along to get along. So this is a type that often, without even trying, will sacrifice their own self or ego to please others. The focus is not just on pleasing, it's more to create harmony, lower tension, avoid conflict. So the coaching for this type is to actually be stronger and be more self-oriented, more individualistic, etc. So I think of this type, I think of the kind of cow you see on the road, like in Vermont, and hanging out. This type can, the 9 can be very action-oriented, but they can easily take breaks. They know how to relax. They kind of go with the flow. They're very accepting, very forgiving, slow to anger, but you have to watch out because this type can really be pretty ferocious, believe it or not. So one of the concepts I want to mention is underneath it all, each type has the opposite of its type. Because each type is the ego, it's kind of like the surface level. Underneath it, the opposite is repressed. So this type can be very strong when their energy comes out. So you want to make sure you're pleasing this type because they can go a long way and be pleasing you and not really focused on themselves. And I always think of the carousel horse is kind of a 9 symbol. They, the carousel goes up and down, and in a steady rhythm. 9s are very steady. They typically don't like a lot of intensity. They don't mind some for sure because they need that to balance, but they like things kind of known and regular on average. Now when I get into the subtypes, I'll explain some differences. And they're into comfort. They have their comfortable slippers, etc. Okay, and they might wear a very comfortable hat in the winter just to cover their ears and not necessarily be that fashionable. So I want to emphasize, for sure, you can be all 9 types. If you haven't discovered your core type yet, don't worry about it. Think about it. Think of how you've been most of your life, particularly what your thought process has been. Ask 2 or 3 people who know you really well what your core type might be, because they'll know sometimes more than your own. If you're trying to correct your type, that is not your type. Whatever you're correcting to. Matter of fact, if you're trying to correct something, it means you're correcting something that before wasn't working as well, and that's your type. What's often not working so well that you're trying to correct is your type. So, so that's basically the 9 types. Now let me focus a bit on looking at some of the subtleties of this to clarify it more. There's actually hundreds of Enneagram types when you get into it more deeply. This is basically a presentation on the basics, but I'm going to go into some depth with this. Now each type has what's called a wing. A wing is an adjacent number to your core type. So for instance, a 7 adjacent number would either be 6 or 8. And typically one of those numbers you're going to have a mix of that's next to your type. So a 7 with a 6 wing is going to have the core fun part of 7, but they're going to have a little of the concern of the 6. They're going to be a little more cautious, not like a 6, but just they're going to have a mix. The 7 with the 6 wing, for instance, is more relationship-oriented and more concerned about things that could go wrong. The 7 with the 8 wing is more like the 8. The 7 and the 8 energy are both really powerful and strong. So the 7 with an 8 energy is more independent than the 7 with the 6 wing, and they're more, there's a stronger edge. Like Howard Stern or Jack Nicholson would be a 7 with an 8 wing, very strong energy. I'm trying to think of a 7 with a 6 wing. I'll come up with that in a minute. So, for instance, a 5 with a 4 wing, the intellectual 5 with a 4 wing is going to have an edge of the romantic or the feeling nature, so they're often into writing. They might be a writer, they might be in the arts, they might be musicians. You see a lot of 5-4 wings as musicians, whereas a 5-6 wing is always going to be more into computers, theory, political discussions, things that are a little more purely intellectual. And you can have both wings, by the way. Sometimes you might have one wing or you might have another wing. But generally one wing is more dominant, and it gives a flavoring, so much so that you can actually count on 18 types called wing types. So a 9 with an 8 wing is going to have a very different kind of flavor than a 9 with the 1 wing. By the way, I'm a 9 with an 8 wing, very different than a 9-1. I have an edge of the 8, the director boss. I'm generally very mellow like a 9, but if I'm pushed, I can be very strong-willed. And the 9 with an 8 wing is kind of more in the body and is a little bit more of an eat, drink, and be merry quality like 8s have, and 7s can have that too. Whereas a 9 with a 1 wing is a little more rigid, a little more focused on being moral and doing things right. There's more of a kind of a definite kind of quality, a little more reserved. Matter of fact, each Enneagram type can have an introverted or an extroverted version of itself. So I'm an extroverted 9. Most 9s are introverted. So, some people might mistype me. Just seeing if you just use one example of a 9 who's more introverted, you might not see the range. There's many, many different kinds within each type. Matter of fact, I do workshops for each type, and for like a night just for 4s or a night just for 9s, and you see many, many varieties. By the way, while I'm mentioning workshops, I do lots of public workshops on the basics of the Enneagram, where I act out the types and help type people in the audience and point out growth and relating tips like I'm doing to you. But it's a lot of fun to come to some workshops where I do that. You can find my workshop schedule both on www.herbpierce.com, P-E-A-R-C-E, and you can also find them on, I do meetup groups, so if you go to www.meetup.com Enneagram-group, and then with another slash, you'll find my Enneagram meetup group. And in that group, I also teach workshops on the Myers-Briggs besides the Enneagram, as well as Eckhart Tolle and a few other systems too. So that's a little bit about the wing theory concept. So by all means, don't just think that you're only one type. By the way, in the system, you move in the system. So I'll use me as an example again. There's something called the stress type. The stress type is another type you particularly move to when you're under a lot of stress. So when a 9's in stress, they go to 6, and they're a little bit more like the 6. They get kind of a lot of obsessive thinking. 6s, that can happen. They get more worried and doubting, etc. Now, we all can do that when we're anxious, but 9s, when they're under a lot of stress, can almost become a 6 on a permanent level. And what you want to actually be your type. You don't want to stay in your stress type too much. But being in your stress type is helpful to know, because you can go, okay, I need to get back to my type, I need to relax, etc. Each type also has what's called a secure type. The secure type is another number you go to, particularly when things are going well. 9s go to 3 when they're secure. My suggestion actually is that you develop the best qualities of any of the types. So for a 9, develop the best qualities of 6 and 3, and you'll be doing well. Let's go to another type. Type 4, for instance. The stress type theoretically is 2. When 4s get highly stressed, they can become needy like a 2 and kind of overgive to be loved, etc. And when things are going well, they can go to the high side or the higher qualities of 1 and be more objective and more focused just on doing what's right instead of always doing things just for their own personal self. But again, the balance for 4 is to develop the higher qualities of 1 and 2. Again, develop the higher qualities of all the types. One of the things I've done in my life is pick a type at a time and work on developing that to integrate myself. I have personally worked a lot on type 7 and 8 to integrate, because I want to be the positive kind of thinking quality of 7 and the direct, be more direct like a 9, because, like an 8, because as a 9 I tend to kind of go along to get along, and I'm always trying to balance. So my belief very much is to develop all 9 parts of you. See this system as 9 energies or 9 parts of yourselves or 9 parts of ways to integrate. Let's look at relationship dynamics. One of the best tips I can give you, and my focus as a therapist is really working a lot with couples and families. That's my specialty. Most people see me because of my expertise working with type differences. When I work with people, I always type them, and I use the Myers-Briggs often too, and we're going to go into subtypes in a bit, but I subtype people. So it's a very analytical process. It's very quick. Within 1 or 2 hours, I can have a couple deeply understand what their dynamics are that's not working, and look at some strategies that will work a lot better. So most of us typically relate to our partners or people we're connected to as if they're somewhat like our type. Well, that often will not work. So a strong belief I have is to be like the type of your partner. So if you're in a relationship with a 6, be a little more cautious and concerned and think about the future like 6s do and plan for it, and don't just do things on the fly. Be aware of problems or dangers or security issues that might show up. If you do that, you'll have a much greater relationship with the person that you're relating to. If you're with a 3, you want to be focused on achievement and goals and action steps. Otherwise, you're going to have more conflict. At the same time, you need to advocate for what's normal and comfortable in your type also. It's important to communicate to the person that you're in relationship with type-wise in a way that's respectful of their type, obviously. If you're in a place where you're disrespecting the person, in a sense you're disrespecting the type, because the type often is a core feature of the person. You know, whether we're talking about the Enneagram, which we are now, or the Myers-Briggs, or any other system you might use. There's another system I use called personal thinking patterns, or astrology. People are often into that. You know, they're all great psychological systems to understand difference, and that's really what I'm about, is really understanding difference. I spent many years teaching gender differences courses. I taught race relations many years ago when I was in the Navy. My whole life has been devoted to trying to find a more respectful way to clearly understand differences. The more you can understand about differences, the better off you'll be. Matter of fact, one of the best ways is to buy my book, which you can also get from me. You can get it from a store. You can also purchase it from me. And I describe each type in great, great depth, and a large part of the book is focused on relationship dynamics, how this type relates to that type. Lots of personal examples in the book on that, how to grow and develop yourself. As a matter of fact, one of the best ways you can have a great relationship is to grow and develop yourself so that your partner has less to have to deal with your stuff. So there's also lots of Enneagram information on the internet. There's hundreds of thousands of websites on the Enneagram. I certainly would want you to check my website out, herbpearce, Pearce.com. And one of the best things you can do is read about your partner's type. Get to know them. Have them educate you about their typology. I often suggest couples come to workshops together because you'll learn so much about each other. And the workshops generally, because there's lots of people around, are often a lot of fun. There's a lot of humor, etc. Matter of fact, I just organized a workshop that's going to happen soon just for couples only. So that's a little bit about some of the things you can do to improve your relationships. Obviously, a great thing is to accept the type you are. This is not about how to change your type. All the types are great. When each type is developed, they're wonderful. Each type is a gift, so see it that way. And if you put yourself down, you're really, it actually is difficult for your partner. So value your type, value every type. Through the Enneagram, I've learned to actually be accepting and understanding of every single type. Seldom today do I get triggered by any of the types because I see all the types as really wonderful. And when you understand where someone's coming from, their motivation, you'll be so much more accepting, compassionate. You'll have less stress because when you understand somebody, you feel confident. You can communicate to the world they're in, that they are in. So again, I suggest that you keep educating yourself about the Enneagram. Either workshops, read about them, do a training in an organization. I also do trainings, team building trainings and sales trainings in organizations. If you have a group or an organization that wants an interesting presentation, workshop, retreat, conflict resolution session, sales, or how to work together more effectively and how to utilize the strengths of each type in your group or team or organization, please contact me. So that's about relationships. Let's talk about subtypes. Subtypes is another whole area. By the way, each of these advanced topics I go into, I do a 2 to 3 hour workshop on. So each of us have 3 instincts. I'm going to talk about 3 basic instinctual drives that each of us have, then I'm going to tie it to the Enneagram. Most people have some drive to mate or to bond or to be close to another person. In the Enneagram language, this would be called the relationship instinct. This is the instinct to find out who you are through being close to another person. So a relationship type person is often focused on areas of sexuality, intimacy, relationship, bonding, closeness, intensity, depth. This is a person who really wants to get close to another person. The social instinct is more about your image in a group, whether you're included or excluded. It's about the herd instinct, where you fit in socially. It's often about work because work is often in a social context. It might be your relationship to the world or community, but you see yourself more in relationship to your social self, your social image, and concern you might have if your image is not good. The self-preservation instinct is focused more on basic survival, food, shelter, clothing. It relates to one's individual self, but also protecting others that you care about. So it's much more focused on security and protection. So we have each of these drives, but one of them is dominant in most people. So whatever you're dominant in is the one you think about and are concerned about. Your dominant instinct is the one that's not necessarily so easy for you. It's something that you typically struggle with, you think about, you work really, really hard to try to get that area in your life. Relationship dominant subtypes are focused that people that are always focused on relationship issues. They'll go to workshops and read books on relationships. The social person is a person who's trying to either get ahead or be valued socially or be included or be the head of this or to be in who's who or something that has a social context to it. Or they'll devote themselves to fixing the world or correcting things in their community. Politicians are often social dominant subtypes, and self-preservation subtype folks are more steady and reliable and not so much into drama. So your primary subtype or dominant subtype is what I've described. But we have all three of those areas. So this is called subtype stacking, which is the order that you are. So the one in the middle is usually the area in your life that's fairly easy for you. For instance, I'm a relationship dominant subtype. I've devoted my whole life to dealing with relationships, and my work is about that. It's very typical. I'm a social middle subtype, so the one in the middle, like socially, I'm very comfortable. If I meet new people or if I go to a party or a group, I love to be in front of people. I love to teach in front of people. Matter of fact, I wish there were tons of people right here to experience this right now. Actually, there are, because there's this great crew that's really filming this right now, and I like that. I like to be part of a group. It's comfortable. The third subtype is the one you typically neglect in your life. So it's self-preservation would be mine, and I typically have to constantly work at how to, be secure and be comfortable and take care of myself financially. That's the thing I have to really work hard at. So the order of your subtype is really important, and I do a whole presentation just on subtype order. There's a number of workshops coming up on that. So there's 6 different types. You could be a relationship, social, self-preservation, or preservation, social, relationship, etc. So there's 6 different orders. Then each dominant subtype has a unique description. So a dominant relationship 9 is going to have a different description than a dominant social 9 or a dominant self-pres 9. So you can see the possibilities are endless of the different kind of variations that can happen. That's one of the things I love about the Enneagram. It's so unique. It really in no way boxes you in. Actually, it helps you get out of a box. So again, if you want to go to some of the workshops that I do on this, and I do often 2, sometimes even 3 a week, the best thing is to go to my website, herbpierce.com. You can also go to meetup.com and just search for Enneagram, the Enneagram of Personality, and you'll see all the workshops that are coming up. And the workshops are fairly inexpensive. There's a sliding scale, so it's something that's very, very affordable. Bring a friend. It's actually a lot of fun. One of the things I encourage is people to organize a workshop for your friends. I'll go to your house. I can have it where I live. And we often yuck it up and have a great time. Everyone gets typed, and I use my props, and I answer lots of personal questions, so you'll always have a great time if you do that. So the subtype information is really important. And some other things that really make this system so rich is that whatever your parents' types are, that often has a very strong effect on you, obviously your parents. So there's often a love-hate relationship with the types that your parents might be. Now, if your parents were fabulous and you grew up and there were no problems, there probably won't be as much of a type residue. But whatever your parents' types are, you need to heal that and resolve that. So ideally, that you see all the types as wonderful people. We've all had negative experience in relationships, whether it's with parents or siblings, or particularly intimate relationships or deep friendships or work relationships with certain of the types. But if you're with a mature version of any type, you'll love that type. So maturity plays a gigantic role in the typing process. So it's important to heal past relationships so that you really see the strengths of all 9 types and can have great relationships with any type. That's one of the things that's so fabulous about, that has helped me so much in my life, is that all the types seem great to me. I can instantly learn how to relate to this person or that person. Even when they're stressed, it usually doesn't disturb me that much. I can almost guarantee you, if you study the Enneagram, you'll have more and more of that kind of experience. So whether you're typing your children or friends or people at work, you'll have a much easier way of being with them when you understand some of their type differences. Let's look at personal growth. Every type needs to grow and develop. If you're a 1, perfectionist, you need to balance out by being more flexible, accepting things the way they are, and realizing you don't have to be perfect. The good news about the Enneagram is that you don't have to be what your type is telling you to be. The type is actually pressuring you to be something. Like your type is telling you, oh, you need to be a perfectionist. You don't have to be a perfectionist. The other 8 types aren't requiring that. They just want you to be who you are. So as a perfectionist 1, relax, live and learn, and let go of this inner critic that is telling you have to be perfect. Type 2, the helper, or the over-helper or pleaser. You don't have to give to everybody. You can focus on yourself. You can be direct about your needs. You don't have to constantly be this kind of positive, upbeat, cheerful person. You can look at your own difficulties and pain and get help from other people. Often 2s don't get the help that they need for the very reason that they think something's wrong, that if they need help. Well, you know yourself as a 2, you feel you need others to help them. Let others help you, and you'll be doing them a service, really. It's a balancing act. Type 3, the achiever. You can relax. You don't have to beat your last record. You don't have to have one more achievement to have self-esteem. You can be okay. Chill out more. Relax. Be yourself. Have hobbies that you might not be good at. You don't always have to be winning and competitive. And it's okay to be down at times too. The 2 and 3 both have an issue with it. They always feel like they have to be kind of upbeat. The 4, it's okay to, the romantic, it's okay to be normal and have things be boring for a while. Let go of the search. Matter of fact, search creates pain. It's okay to search, but don't get into a mode of searching as thinking that that's who you are, as all of who you are. 4s sometimes are overly intense. Try to see things objectively and not always see things from a personal level. Type 5, the observer. Or the thinker-observer. By all means, be intellectual, but also be emotional, be personal, share yourself. Don't always have to understand things before you do them. Dive in. Talk about things you don't know. Ask people. You don't always have to be an expert on knowledge. Type 6, the questioner. The questioner's always trying to be secure. Well, you're never going to find total security outside yourself anyway. None of the types are going to find that. So it's really important to be secure within yourself, do your best shot at being secure, but, relax more. Look at what's working. Look at what's positive also. Type 7, the optimist. Be optimistic by all means, but, look at problems. Accept pain as part of life. If you don't accept pain as part of life, you actually could nosedive into depression because you're so positive, you might get thrown if things get painful. Own things that are difficult. You don't always have to be cheerful. You can be down. You don't always have to cheer other people up. Type 8 is the boss director. This is someone that underneath it, like all of us, is vulnerable and insecure and has fear and doubt. And so just accept that part. People see you as strong, so you don't ever have to worry whatsoever about people seeing you as strong or overprotecting yourself, because people see your strength easily. So the more you share your insecure side, the more people will just love you more for being a whole person. Type 9, the peacemaker. Type 9, the peacemaker needs to be more direct. You don't always have to create peace and harmony. Speak up, be individual. Have some conflict, There's nothing wrong with conflict. Conflict actually creates positive things at times. You have to deal with conflict and difficulty. So, to sum up, be all the types that you are. You're all 9 types. Be careful of type prejudice. Don't put down any type. Everyone has a right to be the unique self they are. People can't change quickly. You can't change quickly, so don't be any different than what you would expect from yourself. The more you understand people, the more they will bring out their best selves. If you're trying to repress anyone or you're judging someone or putting someone down, they're not going to be the best person that they can be. So, to end, I want to really emphasize, ultimately, let go of all the type. Let go of your type. Spiritually, we're all moving toward a place where you can be everything that you can be, and that observe your type, but don't always react and limit yourself by thinking you're this type. Keep letting go of yourself so that you can see that you're every single thing that I've described. And just have a good time with all this. This is not about boxing anyone in, and be careful of over-typing people or having limited ideas. The main thing is to be yourself, have a great time, be everything that you are. And so anyway, thanks so much for being with me. Go to my website, herbpierce.com, and feel free to call me too. It's really fine. Thank you so much.